Okay, so today we're going to learn the waffle stitch. We're going to make a small sample and then I will do some stitches on the blanket I'm working on so you can see how it works up once you really get going. But to start it out, you're going to chain however many you want in a factor of 3 and then add 2 to the end. So the pattern itself is 3 stitches and you need 2 extras, one for each end, so that you have a nice clean finished edge on both sides. So to get started, we're just going to DC in the 4th chain from the hook, and DC all the way across, my kiddos are in the background playing some sort of live action version of a video game they love, so sorry if there's lots of pew pew noises in the background. This is what summer vacation's all about, right? Alright, so we made it all the way to the end. At the end of every row you're going to chain 2 and turn. Okay, and that chain 2 is going to count as this stitch here. So you won't actually work into this stitch ever. This will count as your DC there. So our first row after the DCs, which is kind of our foundation, is to start our waffle stitch. So not in this stitch, but in the second, around the post of the second DC, we're going to do a front post DC. To do a front post DC, you go in the back and out the other side, around the post, not through the stitch. And then you do a regular DC, and it will have wrapped itself around that bottom post. So then you have to look at the back and make sure that the stitch part of the post you just wrapped it around does not get worked into, or else you'll end up increasing your number of stitches. So as you do the front post DCs, make sure that there is an unworked one directly behind each one to keep your number of stitches even. So then the next 2, we're going to do a regular DC. And then in the next post, we're going to do another front post DC. And then 2 DC again. And another front post DC. 2 DC again. Front post DC. 2 DC again. Front post around that very last full DC. And then you're going to DC, and this is kind of hard to see on the very first row. You have that chain 3 that you started with, so you're going to DC in the top of that chain 3. Okay, so here's what you've got so far. And that chain 3 is going to lay flat eventually, but it's hard at the very beginning. So here's what you have so far. So chain 2 and turn. And we're going to work the row 2 of the pattern. So around into that first stitch, so not the one that the chain 2 is in, but in this stitch, the one that was a front post on the other side, you're going to DC into that stitch, and then around the 2 regular DCs from the other side, around the next 2 stitches, you're going to front post DC. So DC, and then 2 front post DCs. DC, and 2 front post DCs. DC, 2 front post DCs, and then DC, and you'll have come back to your chain 2 from the previous row, so we're going to DC into that one, into the top chain of that one. So this is what this side looks like now. So you'll also notice that when you go to flip it over, see there's those 2 unworked stitches where the front post DCs were. So you always want those to show. So that's what's going to give your waffle this horizontal rib. So the front post DCs are going to be your vertical ribs, and the showing stitches from the front post DCs on the other row is going to give you the horizontal rib. So, well, all we have to do is repeat those 2 rows until our blanket is the size we want it to be. So we chain 2 at the beginning, turn, don't work into that first one, work a front post DC, and then 2 DCs into the next 2 DCs, or they're into the front post DCs of the previous row actually. So then front post DC, and 2 DC. So you'll see that your front post DCs are going to line up. So it's going to go front post, and then when you flip it over, this is a DC, and then when front post on this side. So you're just going to keep stacking that line up. So front post, two DC, front post, two DC, front post, and then we are back to the starting chain, so DC into the top of that chain. Chain 2 and turn. Our going back the other way row is DC and then 2 front post DC or front post DCs. DC and then 2 front post DCs. DC, 2 front post DCs, DC, 2 front post DCs, DC and DC in the top of the starting chain previous row. So here after a couple rows, this is what the back is going to look like. You're going to have some kind of 2 stitch wide ridges that go down here, and the front is your waffle stitch pattern. So you see that the back row, or the second row of front post DCs has made nice horizontal ribbing, and the front post DCs on the even or the odd rows, so rows 1 and 3, made the horizontal ribbing. So when you really get going on this, it starts to look like this. So this is the blanket I've got going right now. So when you really get going, you can see how it gets these great ribs going, and then the back side has the 2 stitch wide ridges on the back. And that is the waffle stitch. If you get started on a blanket, I would sure love to see pictures, as always. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and we can add on to the video as needed. And I can't wait to see your guys' work. Bye!